This is huge. I'm running along on a tough morning. I got myself to the AT around 10 o'clock to do the climb north. And I'm really dragging today. And I medicated myself with too many Cliff Bars and Lara Bars before I started just to get me out the door. And it got me out the door, but it also put me in a pretty challenged state of digestion. But I'm here, so I'm going up the climb, and it's steep, but already within like 2 minutes, I can feel the fact that I'm here. I've arrived, I'm outside, I'm moving towards the trail. I cross the river, it's beautiful. I hear the sound of the water, and then I start going up the rocks, the stairs. And it's a 1,300 foot climb, or more, maybe 1,400 feet to the summit of Maple Hill in 2 miles. And as I'm going up the rocks, I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm not tired so much as I was just feeling bad. I was in a depression. But I'm not tired, at least not anymore. Depression is more about being agitated and irritated to the point where your body just gives up. But it's not fatigue in the normal sense. So as I'm climbing and I'm cruising, I'm thinking, you know what? I might be able to go for a course record here. I might be able to beat my best time, or at least get close to it. So let's go. And that excited me. And now I'm running even faster up this climb, and my heart rate is climbing. My breathing is climbing. But I go back to one of my old tools, which was a mantra that I started saying to myself in 2016. This is what winning feels like. Whenever that burn, whenever that feeling of failure, whenever that hurt box showed up and the voices of quit were screaming louder than anything else, I would say this is what winning feels like, and I would go. And I'd grit into it. But now, a lot has changed since then, and I don't do that anymore. I still think there's a lot of value there, and I think it's a great transition. But the place that I'm at now, after years of working with these tools, I simply smile. That's it. There are no words. I simply smile. I used to call this smiling for no reason, but even that, there's a cognitive layer there that slows it down and allows for cognitive appraisal to doubt what you're saying. Smile for no reason. Well, why? Why would I smile for no reason? So it begs a question. But after practicing this for, I'd say 9 or 10 months now, it's not an automatic decision because it is a choice, but it's simply the choice to smile. And now, rather than being a hack, rather than being a trick, it's a choice to nurture. It's an empathetic or compassionate response to suffering. Just as a mother, seeing their child suffering, wants to reduce that suffering. And the most effective way to do this is not to scream like the child and have fear in your eyes like the child, but to nurture the child, to calm the child, to soothe the child, to show the child a model of calm, a model of peace and tranquility, a model of love and nurturance. So in a sense, that's what I'm doing now, and that is a compassionate response. There's an empathetic engagement initially, there's a spark, there's an irritation, there's inflammation. And then, as studies show when looking at the brains of Buddhists, looking at graphic images, they have an empathetic response. They have suffering in themselves, but then they turn it on a dime into the desire and the choice to reduce suffering. And this is what compassion is. It starts with empathy and then it turns it around into love, into space, into a calm, safe place. Not pulling the person away from the suffering, but showing them calm in the midst of the suffering. So it's not creating a safe space by saying that there's no suffering allowed here. It's creating the safe space of, yes, there's suffering here and it's okay. You're safe here. You're safe with this pain. You're safe with these feelings. So, what I am now doing, what I just caught, and it gets better, is that I've created a compassion switch for myself. And as I was getting to the summit of the first steepest climb, there's maybe a 50-meter break where it's almost flat, but still incredibly rocky. When I'm nearing that point where the course record ends, I twist my ankle and my left ankle. And the reason that's significant is that I have a very weak right ankle. I tore 2 tendons or ligaments, I forget which, in high school, and then tore them again. And I was told that I would need surgery if I wanted to continue running, and I never got the surgery. I didn't believe in surgery at that time. So I have a weak right ankle, and I'm used to twisting it. I twist it a lot, at least once a week on trail running, sometimes once a day. But my left ankle, that's one I don't twist. And when that one gets twisted, those tendons and ligaments are not as flexible. So if they go, there's more of a chance of an injury. So when I felt that left ankle go, there was an immediate, instant wave of fear and bristling that shot through me like a lightning bolt. I could feel it consuming my entire body. And it was about to go into a fear rage, which is something I have experienced. When I'm in a great deal of physical pain, a rage arises. It starts with fear and then it becomes rage. And that helps me move through it. And again, this is not a choice. It's my natural reaction. So when I felt that boom, that explosion, and I felt my physiology completely transform in a millisecond, there was the compassion switch. I didn't even have to choose it. I simply observed it happening. Or should I say, I observed that it had just happened. I watched it happening and I felt it happen. And then I consciously engaged it and increased its momentum because it was already moving. It's like a flywheel. Flywheel's really hard to get moving, but once it's going, really easy to keep it going or to speed it up. So the moment I was consciously aware of this, I pushed that flywheel. I ramped it up and a huge smile broke out across my face. Why? Why did I smile? Why was that my response? And why is that of value here? Because instead of having that rage and then immediately triggering a neurochemistry and a neural activation about a dangerous world and about a limited future due to injury and a protective mentality because a dangerous world with limited physical mobility is even more dangerous. So your alert systems ramp up through the roof. It goes to code red. And now you're not just in pain and you're not just protecting your body, but you are so vigilant and you see the world through very, very dark eyes because this is fight or flight and you just lost the ability for flight. So the only choice you have left is fight or freeze. And my brain doesn't choose freeze. My brain chooses fight or flight. And in this situation, when you're injured, it's fight. And I think that's where the rage response comes from. So, what happened instead? Instead of that shutting down into the laser focus of fear or ferocity, I should say, I opened up and expanded into what psychologists call a broaden and build mindset rather than fight or flight. Different neurochemicals, different neural activation or neural dominance. Different regions are more dominant than others. Blood flow going into areas of creativity, relaxation, calm, parasympathetic nervous response rather than sympathetic nervous response. Increased heart rate variability. All of that happened in an instant because I built this switch, because I practiced this, and because it started with languaging. It started with the languaging or the cognitive reappraisal of this is what winning feels like. Yeah, this hurts like a mother, but this is what you have to feel to win. So when you feel that, you know you're doing something that most people are scared to death of. And because you're doing it, you have the ability or the possibility to win. If you don't feel this, you're not going to win. So this is a reminder. Winning feels like this. Do you want to win? Then celebrate this feeling. This is a good thing. So it started with that reappraisal, but now it's gone through so many iterations where it's no longer vocal. And this is the most important part right here. children have affect before they have emotion. And what I mean by that is that children are born with a fully formed affective brain, meaning they have a well-developed sense of interoception. They can sense what's going on in their body. They can feel their body. And this is something that the brain creates for them. And it's not something that you as a conscious person will ever fully understand, because your consciousness is essentially a simulation of what might be going on in your body, because your brain, believe it or not, does not know exactly what's going on in your body, because it's dynamic, it's ever-changing, and there are so many trillions of cells that are in this constant state of dynamic flux. Some are dying, some are being reborn, some are fighting viruses and bacteria, some are engaged in metabolism, some are engaged in removing toxins, and on and on and on and on. And they communicate not like neurons do, with electrical impulses leading to neurochemicals at synapses. They communicate with hormones and other signaling molecules that are pretty slow. So by the time the brain gets the signal about what's going on, the situation's already changed, and the signal it's getting is being modified all along that path. Because these things have to go through your entire system, and as they do, they're going to be interacting with other chemicals in the bloodstream and in the tissues, and other neural signals as new input is coming in. So the brain tries to make sense of what's going on in the body. It tries to understand what all the signals are saying as they're changing so rapidly, as is the stimulus from the outside world as well, changing so rapidly. And the brain's got to try to map all of this. It's got to try to predict all of this. And it creates simulation that is your consciousness and your interoception, your feeling of body, your feeling of self, your feeling of, is this a good experience that I'm having, or is this a bad experience that I'm having? I need to know, because I'm going to direct my conscious behavior, activity, and thought to reflect that and to make decisions that either help me deal with the threat, deal with the urge for food, etc., or for sex, to go after an opportunity. So it's all a simulation based on these predictions. So everything that you experience consciously is a simulation based on the predictive calculations of many, many, many neural and physiological systems that are in a constant state of dynamic flux and even competition. This one says this, and the other one says that, and they fight it out until the dominant one makes it to the brain, just like a democracy, just like science. Not all of the voices get heard, and sometimes the voices that don't get heard turn out to be the correct voice. But due to past decisions, just like in our judicial system, this is the precedent for this particular type of decision, eventually it gets overturned. But for a long time, that's the precedent. Same with your body. So your body uses memory essentially as a precedent to make predictions. Well, this situation looks like these past situations, so we're going to predict that the outcome is going to be similar, and therefore we suggest this type of feeling, this type of emotion, and this type of behavior. Go. All right, here I go. I'm in the game. It's like the coach saying to the quarterback, all right, run this play. And the quarterback runs out onto the field and directs the players. And the brain essentially is the coach. You are the quarterback. And anybody that understands football knows that the coach is deciding what's going on more than the quarterback is. But the quarterback is the one that's actually in the game. They're the one that has to make the split-second decisions. And that's you. That's free will. Coach calls the play, but you're the one that acts out the play. So some psychologists now call this free wound. Okay, the reason that I'm bringing all this up, and it is important, is that because children have affect and they have a sense of interoception, but they don't quite know what it means yet. In fact, they need a parent, a strong attachment figure, usually the mother, and for good reason, due to the symbiotic biology they share for at least 9 months, and then through breastfeeding even longer, the child is modeling the emotional concepts of the mother. The child is swimming in the neurochemistry of the mother, and therefore in the emotions of the mother. The child doesn't know what those emotions are yet, but they understand the chemistry. They're sensitive to that chemistry. So when they come out, they still smell the mother, and the mother smells them. They still have a chemical bond. And that chemical bond is continued through breastfeeding. And this helps regulate the child's physiology. We're not born fully formed. Our heads would be too big and we'd kill our mother every single time. So we are born with brains that are only partially developed. And the way evolution has it, our cortex, the most cognitive part of the brain, in a sense, is the last to develop. It doesn't fully form until you're 25. And therefore, the child is dependent on its primary caregiver to help model the world and to help understand their own interoception, turn them into emotions, turn them into a narrative identity about the world and about themselves and their place in it, and also to regulate their physiology. Human children have a really hard time regulating their human physiology. Those parts of their brains are not fully formed yet. They're dependent on a caretaker. And there's a lot of data to show how a mom, especially through the act of breastfeeding and talking to her child and holding the child, will regulate different aspects of that child's physiology depending on the activity. Breastfeeding alone does not regulate all of them, just some of them. So, a child, as you've probably noticed, a young child, not an infant so much, but a toddler, when they fall down, do they immediately start crying? Well, let's back up. If that toddler is in view of a caretaker or other people and they fall down, what's the first thing that they do? They look for their mom. What's the second thing that they do? They study their mom's face and body to look for some kind of emotional response. What does the person that maps my world, what does the person that teaches me about the world, what are they showing me? What signals are they giving me? Am I in danger? I have a feeling in me, but I don't quite know what it means yet. So I need them to tell me what this feeling is and what I should do about it. So if the mom smiles and says, "Come here, baby," the child does not get a threat response from the mother. The child says, "Okay, I have this feeling, but I'm okay." But if the mom screams, says, "Oh no," and they run over, "Are you okay? Oh, poor baby," the child's going to say, "Holy crap." And again, this is not cognitive. The child doesn't have the cognitive capacity to have the conversations that I'm relating right now. But what's happening on a much more basic primal level is that child instantaneously reads the face and the body of the mother, the emotions of the mother or the response, and then they map that into their own experience. And they have an emotion that they start to develop that tells them what this experience is like and how to respond in the future to similar experiences, because it's going to save your life or it's going to open up opportunities. People that don't have this type of emotional attunement with a caretaker have a really hard time in life. I know, I'm one of them. And people on the autistic spectrum, again, have a really hard time reading the emotions in others, and therefore have a really hard time reading and regulating their own emotions and their own interoceptive feelings or affect. So, long story to get to this point. When I twisted that left ankle and that shock wave exploded through me, that's the affect. That's the initiator. That's the catalyst. What happened a millisecond later was that my primary caretaker that I have built in myself as a component of my neurology, my neurophysiology, or my neural identity, I should say, that caretaker modeled a very safe, friendly world that is still broad, still beautiful, and still full of opportunity. My response, my immediate smile that was essentially a reflex based on my training myself to do this, that reflex of a smile told the other parts of me, you're okay, go, dude, this is great, this is fun, you're fine. Even if that sprain had been injurious, I still would have had the same response. And what I've learned from twisting my right ankle many, many times in this way, but never with as quick a response as I had today, but what I've learned is that if I focus on the pain, and if I focus on what this pain might mean, and I turn this into a story of injury, and create an emotion of despair, frustration, anger, etc., and then develop a narrative to bolster it and to have that make sense and to feel validated in having these feelings inside of this very well-reasoned argument about how life sucks now, well, that injury is going to physically get worse. There will be a greater degree of inflammation, and there will be a greater degree of physiological response and freezing up, locking, and protecting of that joint. Keep in mind that spraining your ankle doesn't cause inflammation. It doesn't cause reduced flexibility. The brain triggers that if it senses that this is something that needs reduced flexibility and greater inflammation. But you can train your brain to have the opposite response, to send in a different team. So rather than sending in the fire department, you send in a bunch of friends and say, hey, come on, let's go out. Let's take you out to dinner. Come on, let's go. We're going to have fun tonight. Rather than sending in the paramedics and putting you in a stretcher and stabilizing your neck, etc. Now, there are instances where that is called for, absolutely. And you have to kind of learn the balance. But I've learned that most ankle sprains are not life-threatening, obviously. And that when I don't immediately respond to them, or if I can do what I did today and model a positive world, my brain says, oh, I don't need to send in the paramedics. I don't need to send in the SWAT team. I don't need to lock this situation down. Go, have fun, go play, you're good. And that's what a parent is doing when the child falls, and they respond with loving kindness and the demonstration that the world is safe and that they're okay in it, and that the exploration that they're engaged in and the feeling they just had in the midst of that exploration, yeah, that's just a part of it. It's all good. That's what winning feels like. That's what learning feels like. Go, you're good. I love you. You're safe. Come here. Mwah, big kiss. Have fun. That's what I did today. And it was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever experienced in my life. And what I'm finally getting, and the conclusion that I'm coming to here, is that I have learned to create a secure attachment figure in myself, even in the midst of pain and suffering, not just psychological suffering, but physical. And if I can do that, anybody can do that. And that makes me really quiet, as you can probably hear right now, and there's a feeling of humility that moves through me, not of greatness, but of humility, because I see the value in that, and I see suffering decreasing in the world if this is something that people could and would practice.